So reminded, there's a koan in the Zen Buddhist tradition about a bodhisattva, a contemporary of the Buddha, a practitioner called Vimalakirti. There's a sutra, the Vimalakirti Sutra, and he was like the archetype of the householder practitioner, rather than a monk or nun. He was someone who had a large family, worked in business, frequented establishments which could be deemed edgy. So he was an archetype of a kind of an everything person, and it said that when at one point he was quite ill, and everybody was very concerned. So the entire Buddhist sangha came to his, and he had a small hut, and he lived very modestly. But it said the entire Buddhist sangha came there to the hut, fitted in, and then also all of the Buddhas and all the bodhisattvas and all of the celestial beings as well. So they were all in this 10 by 10 room, and I was reminded about that today. We just sitting with 50 some people in the small room here. All of the, I think the celestial beings probably take up a little less space, and they're all here too. But I'm not sure how long this project will take. Sometimes we're in the big room, sometimes we're in the small room. But as we show today, we make it work. And thanks to everyone who would join on Zoom for being patient, as it takes us a little extra time here. So we're going to continue with this exploration of the 10 paramis. I hope that's felt like a useful system of practice to look at. Again, this wasn't something that the Buddha himself apparently taught, right? But this came a little later in the development of Buddhism, and apparently, from what I read, grew from the recollections of the qualities that the Buddha had, or more like kind of the idealized practitioner. And what often happens, of course, with spiritual traditions, or somebody who was a particular, like a founder, a great leading light, somebody of real depth and gravitas, then they pass away, and their image tends to become deified and a little more polished over time, right? And it's like maybe some of the, I'm sure the Buddha had some, dare I say it, probably some negative attributes too, right? It's after all, yes. Right, I'm sure if you spent a day with a Buddha, there'd be a couple of things where you were like, did you see when he did, right? Human beings. But he had certainly somebody of great spiritual depth and ability. And so these paramis were seen as qualities of practice, qualities of expression on the way to the culmination in enlightenment or Buddhahood. And then so just to recap, generosity, ethical conduct, renunciation, wisdom, energy, patience, truthfulness, resolve, loving kindness, and equanimity. 10. There's another system of 6. I like that one because it feels like a bit more doable. 6 rather than 10. But these are our 10. And today it falls for me to say something on the topic of resolve. Resolve is sometimes translated as determination too. Resolve or determination. And in looking at this, I would say that resolve comes at this is kind of like a pivotal point in the paramis and in practice. So if you have somebody who's entered the spiritual life, practitioner, Dharma practitioner, a meditator, or somebody who's just maybe not involved in Dharma specifically, but in another area of life that involves really looking into the human condition and working with that in order to develop, to positively transform, then it begins with this generosity, which we can see as moving away from a self-centeredness, moving away from a fixed, looking inward self-centeredness, and having the wish that all people, that everyone around us, that in a much broader sphere, that like we can agree that we all wish to be free from suffering. Everything wishes to be free from suffering, and so does everybody, because grounding in generosity, ethical conduct, understanding that humans living in groups, where we're living together, we need some guardrails, we need some code of conduct, some standards of behavior in order that the collective group can prosper and get along. So we need ethics. Then we move into renunciation or letting go, we could say, of those things that cause harm, right? Refraining from things that cause suffering. We take it very simply as that in terms of renunciation. Then we have the beginning of wisdom, starting, really seeing into life and learning how life functions. That's our basis of wisdom, seeing things as they are, working with what's real and owning that. Then we move into energy and patience. So we need energy. A practitioner, as a human being, it's just like having the energy to practice, the energy to continue. Patience, it all doesn't arrive at once, the fruits of practice. It's really playing the long game. Sometimes if we come into meditation or Dharma, there's some early wins. Like sometimes people will come to practice and say a few times like, this is amazing. This is great. I want to do it all of the time, right? Because at the beginning, we see what's possible, but it takes patience to work, as we start to unpack our lives and see the reality of the world around us, then patience is a necessary virtue that needs to come forward. And we moved into, I think last week, was it with truthfulness? And today, resolve. So we have all of these prior ingredients of these practices, a way to look at our life. And then we reach the point of determination now to really see it through. Right, so we see what's involved in practice, what we need to sacrifice in our lives, in our practice, the things that we need to let go of, and identify those things that we wish to, the more positive qualities that we wish to grow and develop. And now we move into the time where we need determination and resolve in order to continue. Because as we know, life really tests us over and over again. And so with a life that's committed to or involved in Dharma practice, again, this is like all of the multi-year, multi-decade, and if we look at it from some Buddhist traditions, multi-lifetime approach toward moving away from suffering, dukkha, those things that cause harm, and moving ever more closely towards benefit or the cultivation of more wholesome and positive aspects that brings benefit to this one and to that one. Really so that we can all be free from suffering, or at least moving in the right direction. Right. So as we learn technique, or we learn to inquire into the human condition, we can see the areas that cause us suffering and cause others suffering, and then take responsibility for dealing with those things. But that's a long and often challenging process, and we need determination and resolve to stick with that. The next two that come in the next couple of weeks, when you get to loving kindness and equanimity, right? So interestingly, at the end there is equanimity, the culmination of a life of practice resulting in an equanimous quality of being, having equanimity, and expressing or transmitting loving kindness as a component. Who wouldn't want to be experiencing and transmitting and expressing loving kindness whilst enjoying equanimity? That sounds wonderful, right? But before we get there, we have the years of a lifetimes of the resolve and the determination to move toward that. Now, there are systems in Dharma practice where you can go through all of a lot of the formal study and get all of the empowerments and be recognized as a teacher or a master in some ways. But if the result of that isn't expressed as loving kindness and equanimity, then maybe there's something a little off with the ingredients that went in beforehand, right? Like in these paramis, we have these ingredients of generosity, ethical conduct, renunciation, truthfulness. So we put all of these things from exploring honestly the human condition and then taking these paramis and putting them all in. Really, it's like kind of like the slow cooker, right? That's our practice life. That's like meditation. Meditation is not an air fryer, it's a slow cooker, right? We put everything in here, and then on a low heat, you let it marinate, you let it cook. Let it cook. Let it cook for a long time. This is why I've sitting periods of 30 minutes or 40 minutes. And at retreat over and over again, and we come back and we sit some more. Right? It takes resolve to continue to let things blend together, to let things cook, in order to produce something, to produce a wonderful meal, produce something of real quality. And in a human being, we see in our conditioned patterns, they run very deep. Like in my experience, like habit energies, mental formations, patterns that we have, it's not so easy as just I've identified this as causing suffering, I'm just going to let that go. It just doesn't, it's not only if it were only so easy, right? It's like in identifying the things that cause pain or difficulty, many of which we just inherited, which is part of our karmic trace, part of our the conditioning of our life. We live with them, and the process of working with those and transforming those, that is a long and challenging process. The practice, like Dharma practice, is a courageous practice. It really is. It takes courage to show up and to sit with things as they are. Easy to sit with things as they are when it's all, this is very nice, I feel wonderfully concentrated and beneficent towards my fellow people, and etc., right? But often we find in a life of practice that it's just darn difficult. It's difficult to sit with this one as this one is. It's difficult to bear witness and sit with the world as it is. To be with the reality, just be with the thusness. Beginning of the Eightfold Path, the Buddha says, see things as they are. That sounds great. Let me just see things as they are. But when you look and see things as they are, that now seeing reality is a reality check. You see that there is a lot of suffering in our own lives and in the lives of the people around us and in the world at large. So that's the courageous part, to be able to sit and own things as they are, but enter into the truth of that. And then to be able to address, again, finding those things that are causing unnecessary suffering, unnecessary pain and difficulty. And to begin to let those go, to start the process and continue the process of transformation. But with the attitude of, no matter how long this takes, right? Often for us as human beings, we're like, well, how long is this going to take? Or how long so I can get this done? And then move on to what's next. But in Dharma practice, in this life, these are forever practices. Right? In the Mahayana, I mean, this began as a Theravadan teaching, and later, and it was developed into also a Mahayana teaching, and we could say that resolve here really equates with the Bodhisattva vow. Right? In the Mahayana, we say the Bodhisattva is one who has discovered the Dharma, is on the path to awakening. But the deep vow is that we are all awakened together. That it's all of us, all together. And that's what our practice is. Right? And sometimes we can take the Bodhisattva in a mistaken way, which is sometimes the way it's portrayed is a Bodhisattva holds off from their own enlightenment until everybody else is enlightened. And that's saying, well, that sounds, what a wonderful person. You know, they could get enlightened, but they're not going to because they're worried about everybody. But in truth, and all of you are bodhisattvas. It's like how you just faced with, hey, you can be completely enlightened, but you decide, no, I'm going to hold back from that for the sake of everybody else. No, it's not that way. We see that we really, through our practice life and through our everyday life, we see that we are intimately connected with everybody and everything else. That there is no awakening in isolation. There's no enlightenment in separation. After all, it said that the Buddha, who was a great exemplar of this quality of resolution and determination, had studied all of the practices of the day, had mastered all of the techniques, who'd done everything he needed to do, checked all of the boxes, and still suffered greatly. And then came to the point of having to, with great resolution, sit under the tree, the Bodhi tree, and say, I resolve to not move from this place, from this spot, and to sit until this question is that I have that has pulled me all my life, until this matter is settled. The great resolution there to not move, to face up to what is here, and to see it through, no matter how long it takes or what the cost of doing that is. And then it's said that when he is enlightened, exclaims, I, all beings for great earth, simultaneously attain the way. I, all beings for great earth, everybody and everyone. Right? There's no enlightenment outside of, if there's one person left out of that. How can you call it awakening or enlightenment? This is all of us together. You know, at the Yokoji just finished a weekend retreat, and it concludes with the 4 Bodhisattva vows. So this is the vows of the Bodhisattva in this work of determination and resolution. So, and they are, sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them. Right, so for the collective, sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them. And yeah, and I recall how I would really wrestle with that one, in my mind, and just think, wow, I feel so arrogant. I vow to save everybody. I'm very suspicious if people are trying to save me. I don't know about you, it's just like, people say, I want to save you. I'm like, well, I'm not sure I want to be saved. But sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them. But really, when I really looked at that deeply, what is this about? I realized if I added the words from me at the end, that made sense. Sentient beings are numberless. I vow to save them from, and when I say from me, from the predations of my own greed, anger, and ignorance. That if I want to help the world, if I wish all beings to be awakened and happy, then I ought to stop contributing to the negative aspects, the negative qualities. Right? And practice for wholesome or more virtuous qualities, like the paramis here, as that to be the offering to the people in my life and those around me. I vow to save them by expressing and transmitting what is useful, what is helpful, in as much as we're able to do that. Because of course we're a mixed bag and we're human beings. But to have that intent. Then the next one is, desires are inexhaustible. I vow to put an end to them. As human beings, we're always desiring. Right? And the key one is, the key one is there, for things to be different than they are. As unless that's just me. I don't think so though, right? I think we can all testify to that. How many times a day do I want things to be different than they are? Like I probably that 30 times before I arrived down here this morning. Right? But the vow is to work with that, to take that. Look, as a human being, I'm always with this preferring mind, wishing things to be different, but they're not different. They are as they are. That's the basis. Always have to see that and be aware of that and accept that in. That doesn't preclude action to make things different, but that action to make things different should come from a place of illumination. That should come from a place of awakening. First, see things as they are, and then move into taking care of what needs to be done. The third vow is, the Dharmas are boundless. I vow to master them. We can take Dharmas as the teachings of life, everything that happens to us. The teachings they're boundless. They come in every day from every direction. You say, I vow to master them, but perhaps we could say, I vow to learn from this. I vow to learn from this. Everything that comes, because as a human being, often we can just our tendency is to get a little fixed, a little stuck, a little narrow, right? And then we fall out of sync with the way things are. And we find it difficult to keep opening up to the changing world. Right? Looking back at the world that we miss of a way that we would like it to be, but the world is always unfolding, always moving us forward. I have a good friend who's, I think he's somewhere in his mid-80s now, and we talk on the phone, and he's always telling me about some new app or some new way to do something, and I'm just, oh my gosh, he's like, but he has that quality of just always learning, always discovering something new, always being interested in what's coming in. The Dharmas are boundless. I vow to master them, and I vow to learn from them. Then the final one, the Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to attain it. The Buddha way, the awakened life is unsurpassable. If we look at that very practically, you could say, well, how can you surpass this now? How can you go beyond this? There is absolutely this now. This is the world. This is our life. It is unsurpassable. You can't go past this. It's always this right now. If we are awake to this right now, in sync, alive and intimate with the reality of the world, in this unsurpassable, then that is the attainment of awakening. But it isn't okay, I've attained awakening, let me check that off. What's next? Right? But that attainment of the awakened life is the constancy and the willingness to stay open and let inquiry function and to keep learning. It is the continual process of awakening. Finding our place where we are with eyes open, mind open, heart open. In touch with and learning from those around us. And again, reflecting on these qualities. Like I read these 10 paramis, you'd think I'd have them memorized by now. And I don't. If I had to rattle them off, I'd probably forget 2. Right? But I really feel like it's enough to just pick one. You could just pick one and say, yeah, I'm going to work with this one for my lifetime. right? Anything that says, rather than just settling for the human condition with its tendency to be fixed and identified and narrow, then to choose to practice a quality, a positive quality that breaks that open, that loosens that up. And I think I brought up probably many times, I really like to look into the etymology of words to see what the original meaning is, because over time, words kind of start to mean different things and get bound up with different meanings. And so I looked up the word resolve, and the original Latin meaning is to unfasten, to loosen or to unfasten. Now that's a wonderful quality. If you think about that, like look at that in terms of our meditation. The resolve to sit is the resolve to unfasten. Unfasten this sense of fixed sense of identified separate self, which is the root of dukkha or suffering in the human condition. That sense of separateness and alienation and definition that we all live with as human beings. But for at least for 30 minutes when we sit, right, you can safely, from the safety of our chairs and cushions, unfasten. Like a gate, like open the gate. When you sit, open the gate fully. Let the world in. The internal world, that sense of identified self, of thoughts, emotions, feelings, let that come through the gate. And then what's felt as the external world, the sounds, the movement, the temperature, everything that's going on, let that come through the gate. Right? That straightforward way in the Zen school to sit in meditation is to sit as an open gate. It's like there's a koan collection called The Gateless Gate in classic Zen style. That is it. We sit in that place with a gate. At the human condition, we tend to start to weave something that starts to close and keep us walled off or separate from things or from others. But again, this sense of resolution in this way is to let go, to unfasten, to be unfixed, and be an open gate. And then the determination to continue in that way, right? You realize those who have practiced Dharma for a long time, years, a year, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, right? It's like the highs and the lows, things come and go. Certain points that you can demark and say. I've experienced that over and over again in retreats at Yokoji. People will come in the middle of, say, a 7-day retreat, and they've got a problem, they've got an issue. And usually, that's been reflected by other people 1,000 times. Because everybody has the same issues, pretty much. Unique and different for each person, but there's a commonality in the human condition, right? And there'll be often a sense of urgency of like, I need to deal with this, or this is coming up, right? And a sense of kind of urgency to deal with that. But in my practice over the years, what I've seen is it's enough to just express that and then let it go. Ultimately, these things all will resolve. These things resolve by themselves in the process of time. There's rarely a kind of a quick fix. In session and retreats and that, it's just like reading postcards from emptiness. It's just people's comments on life and meaning, and they come and they just blow through and then they disappear. And what's left is the person sitting. And I trust meditation in that way as a practice. That glacial pace. that the Buddha really exemplified in those 7 days of sitting. Where it's like there's no shortcuts, no magic bullets, no quick fixes. But rather you have to sit still, and then the glacial pace of meditation, of Zazen in the Zen school, allows the body and mind to move through and process and dissolve everything that's there. Everything that we think is a barrier is moved through and seen through. And that's really the slow cooker of practice years and continued the discipline of still sitting. You don't even have to necessarily, it doesn't have to land cognitively, oh, I kind of moved through that now. But rather just the function and the action of stillness and of presence with this resolve, the body and mind will, with practice, with time, will return to its natural essence, which at the bottom is one of loving kindness and equanimity. But yeah, determinate, that's something I discovered when, it's sometimes people think you leave the world and you go and live at a Zen center or a monastery or a temple like that, and there'll often be the idea from visitors, it must be so nice being up here and so peaceful to be around other people who are also, and it's like, oh man, no. It's work like everything else. It turns out it's work like everything else, right? And that requires determination and resolve to just continue. And that's a fundamental one for us as human beings. The resolve to just continue. The resolve to keep going. That is a key quality of a human being. The resolve to persist against all odds and to keep going. And the Paramis gives us a structure that says, here are some key qualities. The Buddha had them. Take some of these on, try these, bring these into your life. As you do so, they become a part of you. You benefit. The people around you benefit. And that's worth something. That's worth a lot. Thank you. I'm going to open it up with some time that we have. Just be conscious for if you have any. Yes. All right. You know the drill. Okay. We're up to time here. So, but I would like to finish with the dedication, our going forth dedication. I'm going to see if I can drop that in the chat for those on Zoom. And I know if you've got a hard stop and you've got to go right at 12, then you are forgiven. Let me see. Okay, I think I managed to get that in the chat. All right, good, I did. Excellent. So let's close with going forth. And just a reminder, after we're done, if we could leave them on the back table, that'll just help with us finishing up. Okay, maybe I'll... Going forth into this world, so in need of light, may I bring all the kindness and wisdom I embody to each being and each situation that I meet. May the power of my practice today strengthen my resolve to be an agent of peace and justice in this world. Going forth together into this world so in need of light, may we together bring all of the kindness and wisdom we embody to each being and each situation that we meet. May the power of our practice today strengthen our resolve to be agents of peace and justice in this world. We dedicate our practice for the liberation of all beings, the great, the small, the wise, the ignorant, the powerful and the powerless. May all beings be liberated from sorrow and loss, hatred and injustice, scarcity and want, and every form of suffering. May our practice today be a prayer for peace, and may it benefit all beings without exception. Thank you all for squeezing in.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.